As we continue with our sheltering at home in the middle of this tidal wave event that we are trying to navigate, in which we find ourselves physically away from our family and friends, many of our underlying emotions, which would normally be better managed under other circumstances into our normal circumstances, are really becoming very pronounced or more pronounced now. Emotions like anxiety and fear and boredom, irritability, even anger and resentment, all that is being stirred. And we might be surprised to feel them suddenly emerging in us. And at the same time, it is becoming increasingly clear that there is another pandemic, a global public pandemic that nobody is talking about, and it is loneliness. And that is what I would like to talk about tonight, about the feelings of loneliness that so many of us are experiencing nowadays. And so I went and I did some research, and I would like to read you some statistics. I read several studies that were done in 2019 and 2020, and some studies report that 47% of people in the US felt lonely in 2019. And in 2020, more than 60% of Americans report feeling lonely, and 56% in Canada. And studies also say, another study, this is from Cigna, that 3 out of 5 people feel lonely in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and in Scandinavia, especially in Sweden, where most people are living alone nowadays. So what I personally have noticed through my work is that people are very thirsty for connection, but a connection that comes from greater authenticity and a connection that allows our vulnerability to come through. We all experience loneliness at certain times in our lives, and I'm sure that if I say loneliness is painful, you would understand what I mean. It feels like abandonment, which is one of the most painful emotions. It affects our thinking, especially now with so much leisure time in our hands. And it also comes with a feeling of shame, a feeling of being not good enough, not lovable, like nobody wants me or needs me, especially if you have a history, especially if one of your parents or abandoned you. You carry that load or that burden, and in moments like this that we are going through, these emotions can emerge. And for many, it's very easy to slide into self-pity or a victim mentality. So unless you become aware of it, it can drive you into hopelessness or other loneliness-related emotions, and eventually into deep depression. Loneliness can actually destroy the way we feel physically, emotionally, and mentally. Loneliness can ignite the longing to escape all the painful emotions that we're feeling. It can ignite impulsive actions to numb that painful feeling. It can lead to self-destructive decisions that will give us some short-term relief of that pain we're feeling, but negative long-term consequences. It can actually lead to pseudo connections. For instance, in substances like in alcohol and drugs, in overeating, in pornography. Addictions usually flourish when there is a lack of connection. So loneliness left unnoticed can lead to depression and anxiety, as I said before. And no matter how old you are, loneliness can affect anybody, from a little boy in kindergarten to seniors, to old people. And it also can affect our health, but also how we perform in our jobs, in the workplace, or a sense of division and polarization in a society like the one that we are living now. Generally, we show concern about the lack of material things or tangible things in people's lives, but we don't talk very much about not having enough fundamental social relationships that make us feel loved and safe and worthy. And connection is so important, because connection is what fills our soul and serves as the fundamental foundation for a fulfilling and joyful life. As human beings, we all have the same needs. It doesn't matter if we are children, if we are young adults or old. We all need to know that we are important, that we want to be seen for who we actually are, and we want to be understood, and we want to feel loved. I just finished reading a book that inspired me to talk about loneliness. The book is by Harvard and Yale educated Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the 19th Surgeon General of the United States till 1997. An extraordinary and wise man. And among other things, he presented the latest scientific data on addiction and issued a call to action to the nation to recognize addiction as a chronic illness and not as a moral failing. And he also brought awareness regarding the dangers of vaping. But I don't want to branch off into that. His book, which was published last month in March, is called Together. And Together, the healing power of human connection. So what Dr. Murphy says is that our conversation about medicine has been very narrowly focused on doctors, hospitals, drugs, prescription medications, and not enough on the emotions that actually drive the functioning of our body, and that emotions and human connections. So, of course, um, uh, like I said before, I think everybody experiences loneliness. It's a very, very human experience. I certainly did, starting when I was a little child. I remember being in first grade and feeling very lonely because my favorite teacher had caught me telling the girl that was sitting next to me um, uh, how to draw the letter F because she couldn't do it, and I finally did it for her. And my teacher sent me to the corner for the longest time. It felt that time, um, and I also felt very lonely in my home when things were not going very well, and I needed to hide whatever I was feeling inside, uh, so my mom would not be emotionally upset. And then even later on, I felt many patches of loneliness in so many moments in my life, and I still do sometimes. But strangely enough, the times when I felt most lonely in my life was not when I was in solitude, all by myself, but actually in the presence of other people in groups. At times, I felt invisible, I felt insignificant, um, even inconsequential. And many times, especially when I was very young, I felt not understood. I didn't feel seen for who I was. And it was as if I were speaking a foreign language. Um, so, how do you experience loneliness? Um, you know, I just described the way I experienced experienced loneliness at an emotional level, but the way I experience loneliness, it's also very visceral. It's very physical. Like I feel all my other emotions. I feel it like in my body, and I feel it like a body, a pit in my stomach, and a sense of internal anguish, which may build on itself if I don't bring awareness to it. It is a very contradictory emotion, even I would call it enigmatic and inexplicable at times. Feeling lonely makes us withdraw more at a time when we need company more than anything else in the world. So what is mindfulness actually doing in our bodies? Well, Dr. Murthy says that loneliness is not only painful, it can affect your body in very, very dangerous ways. And he mentions several meta studies. A meta study is they take several studies and the scientists look at all of them, and then they take the data. And these were like hundreds, like 300 studies, and that's why it's called a meta study. And they found that the mortality risk associated with loneliness is higher than that of obesity. And loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. So, I became very interested in the actual biology of connection and disconnection when I was reading this book. And it is actually fascinating. Being disconnected from others puts us in a state of fear, which is, like a stress response. So our body will produce a cascade of stress hormones like cortisol, epinephrine, glucocorticoids, adrenaline, and we will have activation in the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is in the middle of our brain, in the limbic system, and that's where anxiety and rage are generated. So it will flood our body with elevated levels of cortisol and other stress hormones. And these stress hormones are actually designed to help us run away from predators or from any threat whenever we feel in danger. So it's a very wise and intelligent process that we were born with. So these hormones normally help us respond to threat by increasing, say, blood pressure or the heart rate, or shifting how our immune system really works, all of which is very, very helpful in the very short term. But what happens is that if in the longer, if it continues for a long term, it ends betraying or destroying the body by producing inflammation, by damaging tissues, by bringing cardiovascular issues, and also impairing the immune system, even wound healing. So it also starts interrupting your sleep with intermittent awakenings during the night. They are called micro awakenings. And this is because we are feeling lonely, and we feel that we are more vulnerable to any threat. So our sensitivity is heightened. So we are more alert, and that's why we wake up maybe in the middle of the night, or we cannot go to sleep. And so our bodies alert us when something we need for survival is missing, right? Like, say, hunger or thirst. So we can go and eat or drink something. But when these states persist for a longer period of time, that's when we run into challenges. If I am dehydrated for a long period of time, my kidneys may malfunction. Or if I am hungry for long periods of time, I may suffer from malnutrition. So the same thing is happening with loneliness. It is telling us that something that we need for survival, that is connection, social connection, is missing in our lives. That I am away from my tribe, or I have not found my tribe yet, and my threat perception changes. I may start to perceive things that are usually benign as a threat, because lonely affects the way we think. It can easily develop distortions about your friends, about yourself, about your life in general. So, for example, say I'm struggling with loneliness, and a friend calls me and invites me for lunch. So I should probably say yes, right? But instead, I would think, oh, she's just feeling sorry for myself. This is pity, and I cannot subject myself to the risk of rejection and or disappointment. I would probably have to say no. So I end up saying, oh no, I'm busy, I have another commitment, I cannot do it. So loneliness many times paradoxically produces more loneliness because we feel we feel discomfort, we feel we are not good company, and we, instead of reaching out to people, we withdraw. And the most interesting thing is that most people do not feel comfortable talking about their loneliness, because there is, in fact, a feeling of shame related to loneliness. So we feel uneasy about saying we feel lonely. We usually associate loneliness with an incapacity to make friends, to relate to people, to being not good enough. Of course, this is a misconception, right? You may have a full schedule, many activities, you may be surrounded by so many people and still feel lonely. To the world, you seem as you could never be lonely, but you really are. So you may be wondering why you are feeling lonely when you are married, for example, or when you have a partner. So it was very interesting to read in those studies that 22% that married couples report feeling lonely 22% of the time. 22% of the time, in contrast to those who are widowed or who are widows or widowers, that they say that they feel lonely 12% of the time. So when we are not appreciative, when we are not supporting, um, and we are critical of our spouses, when we take our spouses for granted and stop being curious about their own changes and evolution, feeling lonely can settle in if we don't have a partner who really sees us for who we are. But also feeling lonely and being married doesn't necessarily reflect that your marriage is falling apart. What happens is that we need different types of connections. Maybe your partner, your wife or your husband is actually very affectionate and kind and a loving partner, but you still feel lonely because you don't have friends who you can talk about different topics with, or who have your same interests. So you still feel other connections. Also, you may be a person who is used to projecting an air of okayness. You know, you're used to even being funny and telling jokes, or because you are running an organization or you are the head of your family, you feel you cannot really show what you're really feeling. So you feel like it's your responsibility to take care of everybody else, and you forget to give yourself what you really need. And also, you might feel that showing your emotions, especially your vulnerability, is a sign of weakness, especially if you're a man. So you perceive that talking about moments of sadness or moments of feeling lonely would diminish the confidence that people you have that people you have around you feel in you. And of course, this is not true. People in different organizations want, of course, competent and caring leaders. They want a leader that have strength and can rise to the occasion in challenging times, but that is not incompatible with being vulnerable. And actually, the only way to create that type of culture in an organization is to lead by example. If you cannot you actually cannot ask everybody to come forward and be vulnerable if you as a leader do not do it yourself. So another thing that was very interesting is that one of the groups that is being very lonely right now is young adults, people from 18 to 29 or 30 years old. That's what the research shows. And they are feeling more lonely than people that are older, like than people who are 64 plus years old. But there is another group. So the first group that feels the most lonely right now is the young adults. But the group that feels very lonely after that is the people that are between 50 years old and 64 years old. That's what the research says. And sometimes, let me see what time it is because I am talking, and something else that happens is that paradoxically we start feeling a sense of resentment, that people cannot see the very thing that we're trying to hide from them. So we just expect people to know that we're feeling lonely, and if they don't, we feel disappointed. So what are the characteristics of loneliness? Well, one of them is self-centeredness. We become the center of our own universe. If somebody says no or doesn't accept our invitation, you start to think that you are deficient, that you don't think that this person said no because he has a life and he has other commitments. So you start to take everything personally. That is one of the characteristics. And then another thing is that it starts happening is that we start disconnecting from ourselves. We start to feel that our worth has diminished in a way, that we are not good enough, which is a problem since our ability to connect to others is so important to actually reach out. If I do not believe that I am valuable, I don't want to go and reach out to other people. We start perceiving that we are not worthy of spending time with. So we become lonelier and lonelier. Are there benefits to loneliness? I would say that yes. Of course, we have to make the difference between loneliness and solitude. Solitude is spending time alone. It is not a descriptive, but a situational term. And you can enjoy your time alone. And of course, we all need moments of solitude for reflection and creativity. But as I see it, there are at least like two benefits of loneliness. We usually carry our wounds around, the visible and the invisible, and that when we sit with our wounds and we start understanding what is happening emotionally in us, we become very acquainted with what it is to suffer, and that gives us the ability to actually see how others are feeling, to become more sensitive to detecting, in this case would be loneliness in others. And these wounds enhance our capacity for compassion. Um, so in many ways, it's a blessing to have experienced that, right? And unlike the other advantage is that unlike depression and lethargy, which want us to stagnate or to sink into a dark hole or into darkness, loneliness encourages us to move, because loneliness is a desire, a physical feeling, something missing in the heart that inspires us in many cases to search for company. And there is a poem that maybe you have heard from Hafiz, that was a 14th century Persian mystic, and a poem, and I would like to read it to you. It's a beautiful poem. It says, "My eyes so soft, don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. Do not surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few human and even divine ingredients can." So, without loneliness, Hafiz suggests, how would you find yourself? Loneliness can certainly send us to other people, but it can also move us towards self-expression. It can motivate us to write, like right now is the perfect time to write in a journal what we want in our lives, what we envisage our purpose is, and how allowing that to motivate us to reach out to other people. It can lead us to a canvas to paint, or to the forest to walk, or even to an animal shelter to offer a home to a little animal. Even if we are not specifically looking for God, as Hafiz says, our loneliness will send us looking for something. And many times it is for your higher power, to look for support in your higher power, and also support in others. And mindfulness can help us feel our loneliness without the need to numb it or to push it away. It can allow you to rest in your heart and give it a home, and know it is a valuable connection, a valuable teacher for you to connect. There in our heart is where the transformation really begins, because the path out of loneliness is actually to connect to the love that there is within us, that can inspire us to be of service. And what is service? It is something we do that allows us to show kindness, to show compassion to others. And one of the paradoxes of loneliness is that you feel other people need to come and reach out for you, and so you can be pulled out of your hiding place, when In fact, you are the one who needs to reach out to other people. And all this is very counterintuitive, really. So to volunteer, to be involved in some of these, in some type of project, to serve others, can help you remove you from that dark place. And it can be as simple as helping somebody at work, or a friend, or somebody who's having a difficult time in your neighborhood, or somebody in the street, or to volunteer in a homeless shelter or in a suicide line, or as simply as smiling to somebody in the street. Is just an act of service, is where the source of healing starts. When we serve other people, we build a meaningful connection with them, because the service is rooted in generosity and compassion, and people really respond very well to that. And that in itself can become a source of healing. Then the second one is to shift our focus. It goes by serving, we shift our focus from ourselves to others. And so we don't become so self-centered. And then serving also reaffirms our sense of worth. Giving is the path that will bring us back to find a sense of purpose and worth, which will eventually translate into a desire to connect to others. So we will feel, if I can really serve others, then I am not worthless. I can be useful to others, right? Which is a beautiful feeling. And it's very encouraging, because there are so many opportunities to go and serve others. And it's something that everybody has the capacity to do. You don't need to have a title or to have any money for that. You don't need any special training. It is actually to return to who we really are, to our deepest quality of self, to who we really are deep down, designed for love and connection. And ultimately, the problem of loneliness actually lies within ourselves. We don't really need other people to reach out to us. We don't need an expensive equipment or a degree. So before getting to the meditation, I want to say that there are two forces in all of us. We're driven either by fear, which shows up as anxiety, depression, jealousy, or sometimes anger, or we are driven by love, which shows up as kindness, compassion, and empathy. We just need ourselves and the courage to step up, to take a risk, to let our love and compassion towards others drive our service. Pick up the phone, make a call, and perhaps connect with somebody who's really needing you in this moment. And perhaps the most important thing that we need when we feel lonely is to have self-compassion and to be able to forgive ourselves when we are not feeling as we would like to feel. So I think that I got carried away, and we have very little time for a meditation. But I will lead this meditation in which this meditation is bringing rain to loneliness in these 4 steps, and to do a visualization so you can end the night today feeling replenished is a very restorative type of meditation. So I invite you, and I understand if you have to leave, of course, because I ran too late. I got too carried away by loneliness. And the meditation will probably go over 9 o'clock, perhaps till 9:10. But if you're ready to stay with us, please close your eyes. And connect with your breathing. And let's use RAIN, the 4-step process we have learned to connect to our feeling, in this case of loneliness, and what it means to us. So let's first recognize, and that's the R of RAIN, if we have any feelings of loneliness, which sometimes can show up as anxiety or fear or anger. So I invite you to bring to mind any feeling of loneliness you may be having. And the second step is to accept that this feeling is here with you. So don't resist it. Accept that loneliness is an emotion that is trying to communicate a message to you. A message that we're going to investigate first in our body. So how do you feel loneliness in your body? Some people feel a feeling of heaviness in their stomach, or a feeling of emptiness or a pain in the chest. How do you feel loneliness in your body? So after recognizing it and accepting the feeling, and now investigating where it is in the body, now let's investigate the I of RAIN, what this feeling is trying to tell you. Maybe this is a sign that you have needs that are not being met at this time. Your mind is speaking to you through this feeling of loneliness. Maybe it's telling you that something needs to change. It can be your situation, or your perspective, or your thoughts, or your actions. So you can feel, or you can use this feeling of loneliness to explore what you need, and then make changes to deal with loneliness and feel better. You may feel that you like connection with other people in your life. Or you can feel that even when you are surrounded by people, you feel lonely. We have connections with many people at various levels. From a single acknowledgement, for example, smiling at somebody or greeting a stranger or a person who works in a supermarket, to close relationships. I invite you to think back to last week or these past days. Remember some of the people you connected with. We all feel lonely sometimes. Loneliness is a normal and natural feeling that we all experience. All people deal with loneliness at some point in their lives. This feeling helps us push to connect more, to get closer to people, to take risks, and perhaps to find new relationships, perhaps more authentic relationships. And in this way, loneliness can really be a good thing. So what does your feeling of loneliness push you to do? Think of one thing you can do in the next 24 hours to connect with someone. What can your loneliness motivate you to do? Could you think of somebody you can call? Somebody that you can serve? How can you contribute to somebody else? Maybe just a simple call and asking them how they're doing would be enough. And now we're going to explore the N of rain. One person we need to feel connected to is ourselves. We need to feel connected to ourselves, and for that, we're going to feed ourselves or nurture ourselves with a visualization that I wrote. Imagine that you are in your favorite place, outside, in an open space, and you are alone. There's nobody around. You could be on the beach, in a beautiful garden in your backyard, in the middle of a prairie or a meadow. And you're standing there. It's a very sunny day, and you feel the bright and warm light of the sun on your body. Imagine that the bright healing light of the sun fills your body, pouring through the top of your head, so warm and pleasant. And imagine this bright, warm light filling your entire body, your head, your shoulders, your chest, your stomach area, your hips, your legs, your feet. This warm, bright, and healing light is going down to your hands and filling your arms and your fingers. Feel the heat filling your neck and your head, filling your entire body with a feeling of warmth and peace. Feel an even greater heat that begins in the center of your stomach and radiates outward. The sun shines within you. And let this feeling of warmth and peace grow. And this light has the gift of magical healing within you and infuses you with joy. Feel the heat growing and growing until joy radiates from you as if your whole body was shining, radiating with joy and happiness and light. And inside you feel complete and solid, full of satisfaction. And you feel grateful for the abundance of blessings in your life. You feel grateful for being alive. Allow yourself to feel calm and serene right now. Right now, in this very moment, everything is as it should be. You're perfectly fine, just as you are right now. And in this moment and always, you're fully supported by the universe. We sometimes forget about that, but when we remember, we feel happy, we feel loved, we feel surrounded by warmth, and that is our true self. You deserve all the good things in the world. You have so much to offer in your relationships with others. Feel the happiness that radiates from you and imagine this joy shining like the sun shining on all those around you. Feel a sense of connection around you. You are part of this world, part of a community, your community. You're part of your family. You have friends that need you. They need that light that you can cultivate when you remember that the universe supports you. That light is always available. And sometimes you hide when you feel down, but now it's free and you can continue to cultivate it. Allow yourself to feel confidence, this knowing that you have with this light, you have been born with this light within you. Knowing that nothing is missing when you are alone. You are perfectly fine when you are alone. You are complete. Other people can enrich your life, but you are complete even when you are alone. I invite you to feel a feeling of integrity, that you are just perfect the way you are right now. Allow yourself to feel at peace, complete, serene, whole. This is an exercise that you can come back to at any time. You can seek the universal light that allows you to radiate your true self outward and shift your thinking patterns. And now, gradually, and when you are ready, I invite you to open your eyes.